Hey, what's going on, y'all? Back with another one. Back with another one. All right. Let's talk about something. Let's talk about something. We're going to talk about a topic I already talked about. I think I talked about the Moors once. I found this on the same website like I always did. That's what the guy's trying to promote. Shouts out to him. Good history, good little stuff, like little there and there. I don't agree with the native stuff, but I do agree with the past. It's for everybody. It's like, I wish they had this like we had this in school. We did it for homework, whatever. If we talk about like history stuff, what we want to say, because the schools was very isolated. So the stuff you ain't gonna see now, you already know who the new president's gonna be. It's crazy, but it don't really matter at this point. So I'm gonna get into the motions of what's what. And I'm just gonna be like, get this here real quick before I explain and big up the screen. But we're gonna talk about it right here. So you know how it goes. So, all right, all right, all right. Let's get in here for a minute. So, yeah, yeah. Before we get into it, I'll be right back. Let me go on mute. All right, I'm back. So, the Iberia at the time before it was called Spain and Portugal, like the Iberian Peninsula or the land of Iberia, before it was called Portugal and Spain, this was called Iberia, right? And then it's talked about Morocco, and then you got Tunisia. This is like what you call Africa. That's a European term, or should I say a white man term, or whatever. And then you got Italy up here. You got all these other places, Turkey, which was once upon a time called Anatolia, and then the capital at that time in Turkey, what they call it, Istanbul, and Constantinople was the original capital. Then it turned into Istanbul in Turkish, right? That's their capital, but it was also known as Constantinople in the Byzantine Empire before it was Anatolia and all this stuff. So this is where I got this information from. RealHistoryW.com breaks down the history. Okay, the Iberian Peninsula, because of its close proximity to Africa, has been inhabited for at least 1,000 not 1,000 years after the 45,000 BCE. The Cautions, the type African Grimaldi man, that's what they're going by, the Grimaldi man, the archetype, right? Became the first modern man to enter the Europe. As he crossed the Gibraltar Straits to the straight his journey across Europe, Europe and Africa are now separate by 7.7 nautical nautical miles during the glacial periods. To see, it was ice. All this was ice, like mountains, and then it separated by water and turned to water. That's why it looks the way it does. At the time, it was different back then, and its period much less. But during this Neolithic period, during the Neolithic expansion, various megalithic creatures developed in the Iberia and the open seas, navigate cultures from East Mediterranean, probably from Crete, and called the Cardian cultures, also extended to its influence to the eastern coast of Iberia, but possibly as a early fifth millennium BCE. But the but in the Chalcolithic or Copper Age, 3000 BCE in Iberia, series is complex and culture developed, which is the rise of the first civilization in Iberia, but extensive exchange networks reaching in the Baltic and Middle East and North Africa at 2150 BCE. After the Bell Beaker culture introduced the Chalcolithic Iberia being the of Celtic or Celtic origin. Some people pronounce it Celtic or Celtic origin. Don't really matter. So the Chalcolithic or Celtic origin or Celtic origin. That's what some people would call it. So, but around 1100 BCE, the Phoenician merchants found the trading colony of Gadir and Gades, or modern day Cadiz, near the Tartessos in the 8th century BCE, and the whites arrived, and the Greeks established colonies such uh, as in portions or modern Ypres, they would say right here, right? And these were founded along the Mediterranean coast, but the east and living in the south coast to the Phoenicians, but the Greeks is responsible for the name Iberia after the river of Ebro, Iber, or Ebro, they would say Iber or Ebro, Ibria or something like that, or Iberian Peninsula. I say Iberian, I don't say Ebro. Iberian Peninsula, or some people say Iberian Peninsula. It don't really matter. Ebro in the 6th century, the Phoenician Carthaginian arrived in Iberia while in struggling with the Greeks for the control of the Western Mediterranean, and the most important colony was Carthio, Carthago, and Nova in Latin, named the modern day Carcatingas or something like that. So the Bushman, Martin Sandman, known as Grimaldi Man, right? Get this Telegram bullshit off my shit. So that's what they call the Grimaldi Man, based off the modern Bushman. That's the archetype he will go with. Okay. In 200 and in 219 BCE, the first Roman troops invaded the Iberian Peninsula during the Second Punic War against Carthaginians, and after the 2 centuries of the war with the Celtic and Iberian tribes, also the Phoenician and Greek and Carthaginian colonies. Rome annexed and under Augustus, resulting in certain of province of Hispania, but it was divided into Hispania Ulterior and Hispania Triton during the last Roman Republic. But during the Roman Empire, it was divided into Hispania and Trichonensis in the northeast of Hispania, Bactia in the south of Lustinia in the southwest. But in the early 5th century CE or AD, right, new whites invaded. These were Germanic tribes from the Eastern Europe, namely Suave and then Vandals, sealing and hassling in their alleys. The Sarmatian Islands only in the kings of Savoy and Quay and Markling would, after the Roman and then another Germanic invaders, Visigoths, who have early established their own kingdom, but it's the capital of Toulouse, France, and they slowly extended to the authority into Hispania, especially in Vandals and Alans and Visigoths. Subsequently conquered all the Iberian Peninsula and expelled or partially integrated the Vandals and Alans, but the Visigoths eventually conquered Swabian Kingdom and its capital city, and Baccaria, modern day Braca. In 584 to 585 CE, known as AD or CE, they would also conquer the province of Byzantine Empire in Spain in the south of the peninsula of the Bactric Islands. So this is the Bronze Lady of this time period of Iberia, year 0 to 100 CE. That's the Iberian. You've seen this before. I think I have this on the channel in certain videos. So the Moors, we're gonna get to them. The Moors. See what's going on here. Crazy. All right. Sorry about that. That's another conversation. Okay. White White historians, in their bid to make ancient Europeans seem white, have chosen to ignore the obvious relationship that must existed between Berbers and the people of Iberia. When the Grimaldi crossed the Gibraltar Straits, entered the Europe, all kinds of did not follow. When humans move to new territories, must stay behind in the old territory and there maintain their relationships. There's always a back and forth travel for trade communications, and it's against the backdrop of the Berber invasion of the Iberia must be viewed. The Berbers did not enter Iberia as destroyers. They enter they enter as builders, they say. This is facts, right? But thus, the Muhammad's Islamic army took Egypt in 640 CE and then went to conquer the North Africa. The Berbers no doubt saw this new black army an opportunity, so rather than fight, Berbers joined forces with joined the Islamic army in 700 CE or AD. I got this in the Babylon Timbuktu to confirm this, right? Berber army led by Tariq ibn Ziyad invaded Iberia and Spain, but overthrew the white Visigoths, Western Goths, who were one of the two main branches of the Goths. An Eastern Germanic tribe, when over the period only in 100 years have migrated from Eastern Europe and Greece through Italy and finally down into the Iberia Peninsula and the Iberia and Spain, Portugal. But the Berbers, known as the Moors, created highly advanced civilizations and cultures and famous of its art, agriculture, and centers in learning. While having the rule over Spain, the Berbers, who themselves 50 years early have been forced to accept Islam, now sometimes forced the inhabitants of Iberia to do the same. But though through the numbers of the origin of the Moors remain a small, many native Iberian inhabitants and converted to Islam. But according to Ronald Siegel, some of 5.6 million, Iberia 7 million inhabitants were Muslim by 1200 CE, but virtually all of them native inhabitants. According to the historian Richard A. Fletcher, number of Arabs who settled in Iberia was very small. They were about 900,000 Berbers and about 90,000 Arabs in Iberia. More history below. That's what they say. So you see right here, that's in Sudan and all these places like that. And there's the Chiefman in the art museum, as you can see before. Yeah, you see the pictures in the entrance. This is 1845 to 1990. Not I mean 1902. Excuse me, the early 20th century at this time, and the Muslim Spain European culture. We're gonna get to that. Make sure I ain't got no distractions on the way and all this other stuff. And you know, we got this. When you think of the European culture, one of the first things they may come to your mind is the Renaissance. Many of the roots of the European culture can be traced back to the glorious time of art, science, commerce, and agriculture. But did you know that the long before the Renaissance, there was a place of humanistic beauty in Muslim Spain. Not only was its artistic and scientific commercial, it's also exhibit the incredible tolerance and imagination in pottery. Moors, as the Spaniards called the Muslims, populated Spain for nearly 700 years. As you'll see, it was the civilization that enlightened Europe and brought it out the Dark Ages to usher in the Renaissance. Many of the culture and intellectual influence still live with us today. Still live with us today. Way back during the 8th century, the Europe was still knee deep in the medieval period. This is like 13th century type stuff, or 11th. I'll say about 10 to 13th century type stuff we're talking about right here when you say medieval period. The medieval period and the dark age period. This is the hard times right here. That's not only one thing that we're knee deep in his book. The day the universe changed, the historian James Burke describes how the typical European townsman lived. The inhabitants through um, Through all they refused into drains into center of the narrow streets, but the stench must have been overwhelming. But though it appears to have gone virtually unnoticed, mixed with excrement in urine, yeah, feces and urine, that's what they say, excrement and urine, would be sold reeds to the straw used to cover the dirt floors. But the squalid society was organized under the feudal system and had little of the world to resemble commerce and economic, along with the other restrictions of the Catholic, the Catholic Church, Catholicism, Catholic Church, you know how that goes. Formerly leaning on the monies and which didn't help the things in becoming much. And it's a much anti-Semitism. Yeah, okay. Anti-Semitism previous rare. Yeah, anti-Semitism was previous rare. Began to increase money lending, and which was forbidden in the church, permitting under, they would say, under Jewish law, right? But Burke 1985, 30, yeah, Jews worked to develop currency, although they were heavily persecuted for it. And in the medieval Europe was a miserable lot and ran through illiteracy and superstition and barbarism and filth. But during this time, the Arabs entered the Europe from the south. South Abd al-Rahman the First survived the family of the Cows, the family of the Cows and the Arabs Empire, reached in Spain in the mid 700s. The mid 700s, he became the first caliph, caliph of all caliph of all Andalus, and in the Moorish part of the Spain, which occupied most of the Iberian Peninsula. But he also set up in the Umayyad dynasty, but that ruled Al Andalus, and I'll say Al Andalus for over 300 years. Earlier history of Spain. Al Andalus means the land of Vandals, from which it comes from the modern name Andal Andalusia, they would say, right? So, as you can see, and all this other stuff, and we're gonna get into it. And the first resembled the rest of Europe. The squalor between the 200 years of the Moors and had Al Andalus, and into the bastion of the culture, the commerce, and beauty, and irrigation systems imported from Syria and in Arabia, but turned dry plains into the agricultural, the cornucopia, the cornucopia olives, and wheat have always grown there. But the Arabs added pomegranates, orange, lemons, and serpentines and artichokes, common calandra, bananas, almonds, palms, henna, walled, madder, and saffron, sugarcane, cotton, rice, figs, grapes, peaches, apricots, and rice. Burke's in 1985 to page 37 in his book. By the beginning of the 9th century, the Moorish Spanish was the gem of Europe, was the capital of Cordova. With the establishment of the Abderrahman III, the greatest caliphate of Cordova, came in the golden age of the Al Andalus in Cordova in southern Spain, but was an intellectual center of Europe. As you can see, the pictures and all this stuff, the courtyard and things like that, and all that. Okay. Let's see how much time we got. Okay, 16. Okay, we got 18 minutes. Okay. We won't sum this up. But at the time, London was the mud village and could not boast the single street lamp digested. I say is digested in 1973 to page 62. In Cordova, there was a half of a million inhabitants, but living in 113,000 houses. There was 700 mosques, 300 public baths spread throughout the city and in the 21 suburbs. But the streets was paved and lit, like Burke said in page 38 in 1985 in his book. But the house was as a marble balconies for summer and hot air, and ducks under the mosaic floors for the winter, and they were They were adorned with the gardens and artificial fountains and orchards. Orchards Digest in 1973, page 662. Paper, the material unknown of the West, and it was everywhere. They were bookshops and more than 70 libraries, so Burke said in page 38. But this rich, sophisticated society, tolerant view of the faith, tolerance was unheard in the rest of Europe. But the Moorish Spain, thousands of Jews and Christians lived in peace and harmony with their Muslim overlords. From and page 83, 38 again on in 1985, according to Burke's book, page 83. I mean, page 38, excuse me, 38, excuse me, 38. But the society of literacy, rather than the religious space, economically prosperity was unparalleled for centuries. But the aristocracy promoted the private land ownership and encouraged Jews in banking. That was a little or no Muslim portraying, I mean, proline instead of non-believers simply paid an extra tax. Yeah, pay extra tax. Yeah, that's what it said. And you see that right here. In the name of James Burke's title, Connections, he described the Moors and thawed out the Europe and from the Dark Ages, but and then have done for the intellectual, scientific in Europe and fall of Toledo. In the Spain of Christians in 1105 in Toledo and high ivories and containing the lost for Christian Europe. But the works of the Greeks and Romans, along with the Arabs in philosophy and mathematics. But the Spanish libraries were open, revealing the store of classic and Arabs' works and staggered in Christian Europeans. And Burke's 1978, his page in that a recent book, 123, page 123, right? So we're going to go here, scroll down. Intellectual plunder of Toledo and brought the scholars in modern Europe, like the more candle. Christians set up the translation program in Toledo using the Jews as interpreters, but they translate the Arabic books into Latin. These books included most of the major works of the Greek science and philosophy, along with many original Arab works in scholarship. Digest page 622. But the intellectual community, which is the modern scholars of founding in Spain, was so far superior to what they have home left and lasting. The Arab culture, which was the color of Western opinions for centuries. Burke, 1985, page 41, as you can see right here. And the subjects in medicines, astrology, astronomy, pharmacology, psychology, physiology, zoology, biology, botany, mineralogy, optics, chemistry, physics, and mathematics, and algebra, geometry, trigonometry, music, meteorology, geography, mechanics, hydrostatistics, and navigation and history. Burke wrote in 1985, page 42. But these works, however, didn't kindle the fire what led to the Renaissance. They added the Europe's knowledge, and but much of it unprecedented without the change in the way of European view the world. Exactly. As you can see right here, the Alhambra in 1854, 1932, the picture right this by Rudolph Ernest, and he's talking about the Alhambra when they had that. So yeah, so Alhambra, we're gonna skip through that with the bathing and all that. So hope I didn't get hit. So as you can see, and the stuff the stuff we're gonna skim through. So the beginning of the end, right? We skim through that. Okay. Let me see something real quick. Make sure I don't get popped. Let me see something real quick. Try not to get popped on here. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. We got to the baby part. I'm just trying to do YouTube constraints. Yeah, we saw the picture and all that. And I had to skim through the picture. You know how it is. Okay. Portrait of a Moorish soldier. Okay, the beginning of the end. I don't see much. I hope it ain't graphic all the way through. Okay, we getting the symbolism. Okay, we good. We good on this. Okay, we good on this. Okay, beginning of the end. Okay, let's deal with that. Let's deal with that. Um, oh, it's 25 minutes. It was 24 minutes. Okay, we're almost done. Okay, the beginning of the end. The Iberia, many of the ousted white nobles took refuge in the unconquered North Austrian highlands, but from the day they aimed to reconquer their lands from the Moors. But this was a reconquest known as the Reconquista, and it became also 900 CE when a small Christian enclave of Visigoths in the northwestern Spain named Asturias and initiate conflicts between Christians and Muslims. So, I mean, soon after, Muslims soon after, the Christian states based in North and West slowly in its fits and starts and began the process of the expansion of the reconquest of Iberia over the next 100 years. But the end of the Moors came in January, I'll say January 2nd, 1942. That's when it became the end of them, 1942. The leader of its last Moorish city was Granada, or they say Granada. Yeah, Granada, the city of the Moorish city is called Granada, or Granada, located southern Spain. The surrender armies in recent united Christian Spain after the marriages of Ferdinand II, Aragon, and Isabella I of Castile. But this ended in 800-year reign of the Moors in Iberia. So, so the surrender of Granada, right? By some historical counts, in 1491, Muhammad the 12th was summoned by the Ferdinand and Isabella surrender the cities of Granada, and his son refusal to begin by the Castilians. Castilians eventually on January the 2nd, 1492, Granada was surrendered in the most sumptuous attire, royal presence, and I moved from Santa Fe to the place little more than a mile from Grenada, where Ferdinand took up his position in the banks of Ginal. But a private letter was written by the eyewitness and the bishop of Leon only 6 days and after the recorded in the scene. But with this royal banners across Christ plainly visible in the red and walls of the Alhambra, and the Moorish Sultan was about the 80 and 100 of the horseback were well dressed and was the kiss of the hand of the highness. And according to the final catapultion and agreeing, both Isabella and Ferdinand were declined, and the key to Granada was to the Spanish hands um, without the Moorish Sultan was also contrary, that they were handed over to him, his son, who has been hostage from the time of his capture. As they stood there, and they came about from 100 captives, and and the captives of this who were in enclosure and cross with the cross and the solemn procession of singing the two Tulum Alumdus and their highness, and amount to the door of the cross too, the accompany of the tears and the reverential devotion of the crowd, not less to the cardinal and then the master of Santiago and Duke of Casas, all of the grandiose and um and the people stood there, and there was no one, and it was no one who did not weep abundantly of the pleasure of giving thanks to our Lord. And when they saw that, for those that could not hold back their tears, could not keep back their tears, the Moorish Sultan and the Moors were with him for their past, and could not discuss the sadness, and the plain felt the joy of the Christians, and certainly with the reasons on one account of their loss, for Granada is the most distinguished and the chief thing in the world. That's what they say right here, right? As you can see, Isabella right here. Christopher Columbus seemed to have been present to refuse surrender. The first page. Yeah, yeah, we ain't gonna get in that highness. January 2nd. Exile legend talks about that. I'm gonna skim through. I'm not gonna read that. And Muhammad, talking about 1492, talking about the Mediterranean Sea. As you can see, I'm gonna skim through that. It's a lot of read. I'm not going to read all that. You can find this realhistory.com. I can do a live stream on it. Okay. After the Moors was gone in 1480, Ferdinand. Okay. They talk about that, Muslims. Okay. Okay. Okay, the defeat of the Moors was the course of great moment of white history. It was a duty commemorated in the coat of arms and flags, many former kings of the Moors, right? The coat of arms in Spain, you see that. You see that on this page. And that's the French Sardinia coat of arms, as you can see. As you can see. And then Portugal, right here. That's their coat of arms in France, as you can see. And you see the painting depicting. And meanwhile, in 935 CE, ushered the Esh dynasty, Muhammad, all that. The real Berbers, they show you the real Berbers right here. That's what they look like. They'll be considered the modern Moors, and you see the people today. And that's what they look like today and all that. They're modernized now. You see the people and all this stuff. Yeah, I talked about this before. So that's pretty much it. It talks about the Moors and his coat of arms. We're gonna put it on the coat of arms like here. This is basically good information. It's 31 minutes. So it's pretty much, as you can tell, I want to cover it, somewhere like, we're gonna stop the stream, we're gonna show this right here just for a few seconds and then that's it. So this topic has been on my mind since probably the very beginning. I've done pre-records talking about these people, this culture right here, like I know some of us claim that and stuff, but if you have that genetics, it's fine. But it's vast. It's still people still researching this. This is still talked about years after of this century. Because before this channel was made, I wasn't trying to make this as a Moorish thing because I was curious about the history and put it together. Now the Feds, that's some Masonic stuff. I'm just not going to talk about that. That's a whole nother story on that. But this right here, it's the history of it. I think Bobby Hemmett taught, and a lot of people talked about it in years and years, and it was been around for years on YouTube. And so I've been talking about them for a long time, but at that time, people know how the truth is. When you talk about the Islam and Christian side and other religions that had a formulation, like I just want to cover that. You know what I mean? I'm gonna stop sharing. Shalom to the people of Israel. Hope y'all get the knowledge, whatever. This is talking about the Moorish side on it. It's just a little something to throw in because I don't know what I'm going to talk about next month. I'll figure it out because I'm going to take a huge break on the end of November. Then I'll come back in December and let y'all know. But yeah, this will be posted. I'll have this posted in time. So this is a surprise drop of, because this is recording November, and you get to listen to this probably next month. So with that, I'm signing off and I'm out.